Let's do it.
Eternal God, we ask your help, for our need is great. Our days fly past in quick succession, and we cannot look back without regret or ahead without misgiving. We seek to understand the mystery of our own lives, but our effort is in vain. And when suffering and death strike those we love, our faith all but fails us, and we forget that we are your children. God, help us now to feel your presence when our own weaknesses and the storms of life hide you from our sight. Help us to know that you are with us still. Uphold us with the comfort of your love. Eli, Eli, page 540.
The rush of the
Page 544, Psalm 16. Keep me, Eternal One, for in you I find refuge, and in you my soul finds its peace. Guardian of all my days, you are my cup from which I drink, and the portion of my life. I thank you for guiding my steps, for the inner voice that instructs me. I have set you before me always. With you beside me I cannot fail. So my heart is glad, my soul rejoices, and all of me can rest secure. For you will not abandon me in death. You show me the path of life, and your presence is fullness of joy. On page 545, a woodpecker taps. First day of the year, you did not live to see foothills shrouded lightly in fog, winter rain, waiting at the station for the tram that goes where you no longer are. These trees you photographed, why do I see only empty branches? So warm this winter of your death beneath our chestnut tree, a clump of snowdrops. Cold rain, the first day of spring. I discard can after can of old paint, the plaid shirt you never wore. Soft rain, high above the path we walked, a woodpecker taps and taps again. Whitman wrote, "Look for me under your boot soles, and I do, and you are." On 546, as the number 7 is a Jewish symbol of wholeness and holiness, this Yizkor service offers 7 ways to reflect on loss and memory, grief and healing. We choose alone and together from among these diverse lights. On 549, the first candle on the loss of loved ones. The death of a loved one is the most profound of all sorrows. The grief that comes with such loss is intense and multifaceted, affecting our emotions, our bodies, and our lives. Grief is preoccupying and depleting. Emotionally, grief is a mixture of raw feelings such as sorrow, anguish, anger, regret, longing, fear, and deprivation. Grief may be experienced physically as exhaustion, emptiness, tension, sleeplessness, or loss of appetite. Grief invades our daily lives in many sudden gaps and changes, like that empty place at the dinner table or the sudden loss of affection and companionship, as well as in many new apprehensions, adjustments, and uncertainties. The loss of a loved one throws every aspect of our lives out of balance. The closer we are to the person who died, the more havoc the loss creates. Love does not die quickly. Hence, to grieve is also to celebrate the depth of the union. Tears are then the jewels of remembrance, sad but glistening with the beauty of the past. So grief in its bitterness marks the end, but also is praise to the one who is gone. On page 555, to reflect on loss of memory, the second candle, on inner strength and survival. And on 556, Shir Hamalot. I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from the eternal, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The eternal is your guardian, the eternal is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. The eternal will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul. The eternal will guard your going and coming, now and forever. And on 561, we reflect on loss and memory, on the holiness of memory. And let's read responsively on 561. When I cry, my voice trembles with fear. When I call out, it cracks with anger.
How can I greet the dawn with song, when darkness eclipses our rising sun?
To whom shall I turn when the clouds of the present eclipse the rays of tomorrow?
Turn me around to yesterday, that I may be consoled by its memories.
Were not the sea split asunder? Did we not once walk together through the waters to the dry side?
Did we not bless the bread that came forth from the heavens?
Did your voice not reach my ears and direct my wanderings?
The waters, the lightning, the thunder remind me of yesterday's triumphs.
Let the past offer proof of tomorrow. Let it be my comforter and guarantor.
I have been here before, known the fright, and found your companionship.
I I enter the sanctuary again to await the echo of your promise. And reflect on loss and memory on our most precious relationships. Yesh Kochavim, page 567.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone.
And so it is with people who we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done.
But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. We remember. We remember.
So, as circumstances would have it, I've been giving a lot of time and thought recently to the subject of death. I officiated the funeral 1 week ago for my godmother, Florine Lieberman, Yizkor Levracha, blessed memory. And in and of itself, when we look at how and when people die, there was nothing really untimely or uniquely tragic about her death. At age 94, the only thing untimely about it is that she outlived any reasonable estimate on the length of her days by about 50 years. She experienced 2 separate battles against cancer at a time when survival was far less likely. And contrary to all predictions that she would be the first of my parents' friends to die, she ended up being one of the last. And you should know her long survival literally saved other lives. Her volunteer leadership and lifelong devotion to promote early detection of breast cancer was nationally known and highly impactful, taking phone calls from people going through breast cancer from all over the country just to comfort them and carry them through the process. And as an aside, my most vivid memory of the experience with Florine was when I was away at college. I received a phone call from my mother relating that my parents had been with Florine and family, and that Florine's kids, in order to help her subdue some of the awful side effects of chemo, had brought her some pot to smoke. Apparently, there was sharing going on, and my mother felt the need to come clean that she and my father had tried pot for the one time in their lives. I'm not sure whether I would have found it a great kick to see my parents high, my otherwise somewhat staid parents, or whether it would have been totally weirded me out. Lighter moments aside, Florine's death has impacted me more deeply than I had anticipated, and I'm in the process of trying to figure out why. I'm sure it is in part because she actually took the godmother thing pretty seriously. Any introduction by Florine about me always started with, "This is my godson." And she simply raised the relationship to a much higher status. Of greater impact, Florine represented to me a touchstone to my parents and my parents' generation. On the very personal side, she was my mother's closest friend. And also, my father and Florine's husband, George, my godfather, were longtime business partners and also best friends. Beyond that, Florine's ongoing survival on some level kept me connected to my mother. And to drive home the point, as I served as rabbi over Florine's burial out at Mount Carmel Cemetery, I was literally standing next to my parents' grave. In addition to the personal, I've always seen something uplifting and admirable about that generation, their work ethic and their values. In the earliest years of my life, the families lived next door to each other, sharing one car, and more often than not, sharing dinners together to stretch out the amount of food. My father and godfather were truly committed to building up community. As civic leaders in the Jewish community and beyond, my father's work as a building contractor and developer, in which he partnered with the Black Economic Union, particularly in doing affordable housing projects, informs my own work in the Black community to this day. My mother and Florine would have been incredible social workers. And by the way, of the two, my mother's example informs my work as rabbi more so than my father. So yes, I miss my godmother, my godparents, and certainly my parents, but I also acutely feel the example and values of their generation slipping away. As I try somehow to grasp onto, or at least aspire to those values, the present culture, social, and political landscape seem less welcoming of those values. At the same time, knowing that their generation and the time in which they lived was hardly perfect. But for all that, I miss and maybe wax nostalgic for, I think the difference now in the impact of Florine's death, along with the impact for having the incredible honor of walking with the family through the funeral and burial, is that I'm not the same person I was in having previously experienced loss. This goes along with one of my more oft-repeated phrases that I have either said or at least thought. I so much wish I knew back then what I know now. To have the ability to derive greater meaning from previous loss, particularly that of my parents, would have been a great gift. At age 29, the best I could muster up at my father's death was, I think, numbness. He died 3 days after his 61st birthday. And though my mother died too young at age 76, my own more advanced years of lived experience and my mother's approach to her own death, that she made sure to have all of the important conversations in her last 7 weeks at Casey Hospice, placed me in a far better position to understand and appreciate the relationship and connect to a piece of myself of which I had far greater awareness than when my father died. So now, after having another 17 years of life experience tucked away since my mother died, with Florine, Kal Vahomer, so much the more so, I can appreciate the meaning behind losing loved ones. Yet I still need some help in somehow conveying that sense of meaning, and in that regard, I actually begin here where I started back on Erev Rosh Hashanah 10 days ago, with the author Susan Cain. Susan Cain, whose book Quiet and the Value of the Introvert I discussed back then, but she also wrote a book about loss titled Bittersweet, How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole. A caveat here, as I tell anyone who is suffering loss, neither I nor anyone else should dictate feelings to you or make you feel like whatever you're feeling is wrong. You get to feel how you feel. Judaism and Jewish ritual may tell you how to act, and I think when it comes to burial and grieving practice, we Jews really do get it, but Judaism does not necessarily tell you how to feel about it. And there's a concept in Rabbinic Judaism known as onat devarim, which can be translated as words of oppression. It comes in a very wide variety of different circumstances, with the overarching idea being that you don't take advantage of someone over whom you have the power to do so. Within the context of someone mourning a loss, it is considered onat devarim to justify God's actions to someone mourning that loss. Comments like, they've gone to a better place, they've gone home, this is God's will, are wholly inappropriate, if not insensitive, in our Jewish world. All of which is to say that whatever ideas I relate from Susan Cain's book on how to gain understanding and meaning regarding significant loss, you should in no way feel like I am somehow obligating you to, in this moment, take on her approach. You're not required to have a specific kind of mindfulness regarding how you are processing loss, or feel that you are somehow less than for not being in that place. At most, I'm relating to you how I am processing how Cain's ideas have given me context to process loss. And if you are in a place where you find it helpful, that's great. If not now, maybe down the road. As we studied in Talmud during our weekday morning Zoom service this past week, there were times when facing incomprehensible loss that even some of our great Talmudic sages would give up on God. What got me into the book from the get-go was Kane's referencing her love for the music of Leonard Cohen, something that certainly has resonance here at our Colomie world. Cohen, who she describes as the poet laureate of pessimism, Kane says that Cohen had a way of transforming pain into beauty, that his music even made it seem okay to face the reality that I, like everyone else, is going to die one day. So Kane would lean into Cohen's music, blasting it in her dorm room, which for some reason reminded me of the guy in my frat house who liked to blast Gregorian chants. All this, according to Kane, is about finding direction in the bittersweet. When we are in states of sorrow and of longing, that our life is embedded in dualities, the recognition of both light and darkness, bitter and sweet, life and death. This is the first blessing we recite after the Baruch Hu, blessing the God who creates light and darkness. But it's not in the blessing itself, but in its source in Isaiah, it also has a God that creates both good and bad. And confronting that God, a God who at least allows for, if not creating the bad things in the world that befall us, is probably a subject for another day. This idea of deriving meaning from duality is very Jewish. One of my teachers, Rabbi Dr. Moshe Berger, talked about death creating a sense of urgent appreciation for life. For Kane, we need to fully embrace both dualities, the tragedies of life linked to its splendor. Through leaning into our moments of grief when we have suffered loss, we discover the things in life we hold most dear, the things we most care about. And if we can respond to that pain by acknowledging it, we can turn it into positive action such as healing or innovation. Think of the work of a musician like Leonard Cohen, who after years of torment found joy in performing his music for others late in his life, or an artist like Rivalier. If you remember, we at Colomie did a Zoom program along with the J, interviewing Rivalier upon the release of her book, Golem Girl. She transformed the pain of how she was treated as a disabled person born with spina bifida, as well as being queer, into her art, lifting up and giving dignity to both communities. In a perspective that ties into the ideas discussed back on Erev Rosh Hashanah, tying into an American culture of personality over a culture of character, Kane observes that in America, happiness is prioritized over fully experiencing our other feelings during times of despair and sorrow. Also these days, there's a lot of anger and grievance going around, seeing expressions of sorrow and compassion, and the compassion for others that may go with it as somehow being weak. As Kane expresses it, all the vigorous cheer and socially acceptable anger disguises the reality that we humans are fragile and impermanent beings. In our state of loss and sorrow, it represents a longing for what could have been or a longing for what might yet be. Longing can be momentum in disguise, says Kane, that the place from which you suffer is the same place where you can profoundly care enough to act. And in the same way, we acknowledge the inevitability of everyone's mortality by acknowledging the shared sense of yearning that goes with enduring loss. We can see it as a gateway to connecting with each other and to a sense of community, a sense of belonging. So for me, in this moment of loss, I see a place from which to act upon the Jewish values learned from Florine, from my parents, and from that great, albeit imperfect generation. That does not mean in every instance to do exactly as they would do, but as we are reminded when we recite the El Malay, seeking out God's compassion and protection over our loved ones, we honor memory and stay connected to those who have died when we do act. May we have the strength to acknowledge and allow ourselves to feel loss and sorrow as it occurs, to use that sense of loss to connect with what we hold most dear and sacred, and to use those feelings to act and strive as they did, to live our highest Jewish values of morality and compassion. Kain Yehi Ratzon, may that be God's will. Now name all those that we recall to memory with both an apology for any names I mispronounce as well as any names that we have inadvertently left out. Barb Baer, Eliezer Laser Balk, Albert Bamberger, Emily Ariel Bamberger, Ida Bamberger, Morris Began, Sylvia Began, Stacy Bell, Betty Brynan, Charlie Brynan, Jerry Brynan, Barbara Maxine Bressel, Norman Les Bressel, Babs Chesler, Dick Chesler, Howard Chesler, Mary Moser Christensen, Jennifer Clinton, Ann Cohn, Floyd Cohn, Edith Compton, Tommy Compton, Aaron Corson, Bella Deachman, Irving Deachman, Rose Deachman, David Epstein, Melina Isadora Epstein, Richard Eston, Henry Fear, Belle Finkel, Mort Finkel, Charlene Fleischer, Daniel Freeman Jaffe, David Goldstein, Sylvia Goldstein, Bessie Engelman Gottstein, Joseph Gottstein, Stuart Gottstein, Denise Green, Herman Greenwald, Molly Greenwald, Seymour Greenwald, Colette Gust, Walter Gust, Marlene Gooderman, Morris Gooderman, Blanche Haber, Barbara Hahn, Bertha Hahn, Arthur K. Hirsch, Flora Hirsch, Marvin Hirschman, Dorothy Harine, Joseph Harine, Michael Fred Howard, Eva Ingersoll, Richard Ingersoll, Samuel Jaffe, Daniel Freeman Jaffe, Daniel Karp, Joyce Wiseman Karp, Milton Karp, Sadie Sylvie Karp, Eileen Katz, Fred Katz, Ben Katzeff, Sarah Katzeff, Richie Kay, Mary Keneally, Bernard Klein, Ida Klein, Marshall Kopman, Mary Kopman, Gary Kretschmer, Leon Kretschmer, Nancy Lexo, Florine Lieberman, Al Lipsman, Danny Lipsman, Murray Lipsman, Zeldine Lipsman, Joe Littman, Lillian Littman, Beulah Litzman, Elaine Lubert, Marvin Lubert, Milton Mark, Arthur Mandelberger, Ida Mandelberger, Suzanne Mark, Ben Milgram, Paul Milgram, Pauline Milgram, Florence Munter, Max Neiden, Ida Ordo, Thomas Patterson, Alvin Perlmutter, Belle Prashesky, Beulah Rockland, Max Rockland, Sarah Reisig, Nelson Romero, Robert Rosen, Rosalie Rosen, Betsy Brown Ruzi, Betty Schifrin, Dr. Alex Schifrin, Joan Schifrin, Ruth Schifrin, Dan Singer, Rose Singer, Dorothy Solomon, Ellie Solomon, Pearl Kretschmer Spector, Maxine Stade Wheaton, John Jeremiah Stein, Conrad Steinell, Lois Steinell, Jack Stern, Martha Stern, Arthur Streen, Edward Streen, Lillian Streen, Stan Sutkin, Nathan Zwerdlov, Betty Thompson, Maggie Torgerson, Fan Weinstein Weissman, Herman Weissman, Garrett Wheaton, Bernard Wishnow, Gail Wishnow, Sarah Wolf, Evelyn Young, Danielle David Ben Yaakov Visara, Donald David Alpert, Rachel Bat Eli Vibacha, Rosalie Alpert. Take time now for the Yizkor prayers. From page 570 to 581, we read silently the prayers meaningful to us. I ask everyone to please rise for Yizkor. seated. You are not beautiful exactly. You are beautiful inexactly. You let a weed grow by the mulberry and a mulberry grow by the house, so close in the personal quiet of a windy night it brushes the wall and sweeps away the day till we sleep. The child said it, and it seemed true. Things that are lost are all equal, but it isn't true. If I lost you, the air wouldn't move nor the tree grow. Someone would pull the weed, my flower. The quiet wouldn't be yours if I lost you. I'd have to ask the grass to let me sleep. On page 579, on acceptance, we read Psalm 90. Adonai, through all generations, we have found our home in you. Before the mountains rose up, before the birth pangs of the earth, you alone have been with us, steadfast and constant for all time. In the end, you return us to dust, saying, come home now, daughters and sons of Adam and Eve, you are mortal. In your sight 1,000 years pass in an instant like a fleeting watch in the night. But how brief the span of our lives. Our years flow by in a dream. We sleep away our days. In the morning we blossom in beauty. In the evening we wither away, burnt like grass in the blasting heat of summer. We perish like chaff on the wind. A human life may be 80 years and 10 or 80 years for those who are blessed with strength. So many days consumed by toil and troubles. Then our time is cut short, and too soon we go into the dark. So teach us to number our days, that we may bring home a heart of wisdom. Give us a sense of your presence. Nourish us with your compassion, knowing your love at the dawn of our life. Let us live our days in contentment. May our moments of joy surpass the times of struggle. May we taste the sweetness of each precious day. May the work of our hands bring fulfillment. And on 585, on gratitude for the next generations, we read, those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. It is good to praise, to sing hymns at daybreak, psalms of faith each night. How great is your creation, God Most High. How subtle the beauty of your designs. And Rabbi Harold Kushner writes, our ability to receive God's blessing with thanksgiving will never exceed God's ability to bless us. For those who have cultivated the habit of gratitude, no matter how large a bowl we set out to receive God's blessings, it will always overflow. And Rabbi Judah taught, there are 10 strong things. Iron is strong, but fire melts it. Fire is strong, but water quenches it. Water is strong, but the clouds evaporate it. Clouds are strong, but the wind drives them away. Wind is strong, but the human body bears it. Human beings are strong, but fear casts them down. Fear is strong, but wine allays it. Wine is strong, but sleep overcomes it. Sleep is strong, but death is stronger. And loving kindness survives death. And the 7th step on the words of faith and tradition, on finding peace, there is a future for one who finds peace and wholeness. Continue now on page 593, Psalm 23, Adonai Roi.
Amen.
Shekhinah's sheltering presence makes me whole, causing me to rest in green fields, leading me to calming waters, replenishing my soul, and empowering me to make life-affirming choices in celebration of God's name. Even though I have walked in darkness and known loss, I have not despaired, for you are with me. Your guidance and your nurturing spirit have sustained me. You have set a full table for me when I have been hurt and alienated. You have conferred upon me unique potential which I strive to realize. From the deep core of my being, I am overflowing with gratitude. I know that your goodness and loving kindness will continue to abide within me, and I will live out my days in God's house. We rise for El Malay, page 598.
El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechana Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah Im Kedoshim Utechorim Kezohar Harakia Mashirim Lenishmot Yakirenu Shechachu Leolamam Bal Harachamim Harachamim Yastirem Beseter Kenafav Leolamim V'yitzror B'itzror chachayim et nishmatam Adonai hu nachalatam V'yanuchu b'shalom amishkavam V'nomar Amen.
Merciful God, God Most High, let there be perfect rest for the souls of our loved ones who've gone into eternity. May they find shelter in your presence among the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold them close to you forever. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May they find a home in you. May they rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. On the bottom of 599, Avinu Malkeinu, let there be perfect rest for the souls of the 6 million who died as Jews in the flames of the Shoah. Let there be perfect rest for the countless millions who died because of race, religion, or nationality, political affiliation, or sexual orientation. Hold them close to you forever. Seal their souls for everlasting life in the shelter of your presence. For you are their eternal home, and together we say, Amen. Amen. Continue with meditation, Yehiyu L'Ratzon.
Yehiyu L'Ratzon Imrefi Yehiyu L'Ratzon V'hegion libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali God, my rock, and my Redeemer. Ose shalom b'Ramah, Uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.
Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, page 606. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, ve'almad v'yivrak yulite, v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei b'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalah v'zman kariv v'imru. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarak le'olam u'lamei omaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitma'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaled v'yitalal shemei kedusha brichu leila leila mikol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Oseh shalom b'mromah, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say,
Amen.
We are going to transition into our Nila service, our concluding service. If you give us 2 minutes, and we'll get started.